You are now listening to the Going Deep podcast with your hosts, Kevin Massari and Mike Bunt, live from the Cover One Sports Network. Here we go.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition, a training camp edition of the Going Deep podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Massari, here with Mike Bunt. We're going to spend a few minutes going over what we've seen from training camp. We all got together last week, talked some shop. Mike was there for 3 days, as well as some great updates this week. It's going to be a fantastic show. Mike, how you doing today, first and foremost?
I'm doing great. Always good to talk Bills football. We're getting closer to the return of the blue and red scrimmage this Friday, so we'll be back at the stadium for a nice early practice. So hard to be doing better than I am right now.
Yeah, we'll start with you, Mike. You spent 3 days at camp yourself, so let's start there, and then we'll get into this week. Tell me about what you saw on the field last week, some things in the first day pre-pads, and then we'll start to get into the padded practice this week. So why don't you tell me what you, Greg, and Eric, some of your favorite nuggets that you found from last week?
So just the early nuggets that we really picked up on was the pre-snap motion was evident early on the first few days. The secondary battle was something that we were paying close attention to. Dane Jackson, at least through the first 3 practices, was the cornerback number 2, the most opposite of Trey White, with Kyer Elam and Christian Benford battling. It was pretty fun watching the linebackers go at it, with each of them really kind of getting their own day. Dodson, Bernard, Spector. Defensive line, I was there before they put the pads on, but the defensive line was dominating early on, and it appears through reports that still is happening at camp. And then when you switch over to the offense, it was great to see James Cook. It looks like he's off to a fast start. And Gabe Davis, he looks healthy. He's making plays. Stephon Diggs has been unstoppable. The one concern early on would be the offensive line really hasn't performed admirably so far. So hopefully that's just some early funks that they need to get out of. But as RJ pointed out, Spencer Brown had a rough day, which is not encouraging news for Bills fans after an offseason of questions surrounding him.
Now, you've spent a fair amount of time at practice. Obviously, without pads, the defense is generally, especially on the line, going to be ahead. Obviously, receiver to quarterback combination, that's going to be different. But when you're talking about line play, there's really not a whole lot offensive linemen can do without pressure and punching and holding their stance. So you're going to have some ups and downs from the O-line. I mean, I had heard, and from what I have seen, some good moments from Spencer Brown for some of the offensive linemen. I know today was rougher as we start to get into it, but there have been some good moments from McGovern, as well as Morris when he's in there, Bates when he's rotating in many positions, and Osiris Torrance. So, I mean, I'm waiting to see some more padded practice before I sound the alarm, Mike. I think that's where I stand on the offensive line position. And I think a good note you brought up is the middle linebacker role. It looks like Spector didn't get his time through today, his rotational chance today. So I don't know if that means he's out of the running, if it's just Dodson or Bernard. What do you want to see happen at that middle linebacker position, as it's, one of the biggest focuses right now?
Yeah, I want to see Bernard ultimately be the starter at middle linebacker. I don't hate Tyrell Dodson. I think he's adequate, that he can start here a game or there, but I don't think that's a guy that you really want to rely on for a full season as your starting middle linebacker. As I said last week on the show, he's more of a thumper. He's solid in the run game, but he can be a liability in the pass game. And for the Bills being a team that's so heavily involved with the analytics and realizing how important coverage is, I think Bernard is the guy that you really want to give a shot to, especially when you consider the assets they put in him. Being a third-round pick, didn't really get much opportunities last year. I'm hoping he steps up and wins the job. But it is also encouraging, like you said, to hear some positive things from Baylon Spector. I don't really think he has a chance of winning the job, but it does seem like he has impressed early on in camp.
Yeah. I heard some good things from the players who have been speaking about how solid he was, how he was able to command the defense. So that was an interesting note. I think that he might have a future there. Maybe an injury puts him in the lineup at some point this season. I do believe his roster spot is safe. I do believe he brings enough versatility, special teams ability, and potential to be on the roster. So that's something to monitor closely. But you have Bernard and you have Dodson. And I think Bernard has done enough to win this job so far. And I'd like to see it through the training camp finales as well as the preseason. That's really who's going to call the plays, who's going to command the huddle, who's going to bring the most to the defense. That's what's going to be the most intriguing factor of this. Is it really to see Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde? Yeah, a little bit. But the majority of this is going to be how well this middle linebacker can control the defense. And I'd like to see a lot of snaps each way from Dodson and Bernard to see who can command a defense, thus being the most effective throughout the preseason. So that is something I am keeping my eye on closely as preseason begins this week for the Hall of Fame game, but next weekend for most teams. So that is one of the key things I'm focusing on. Training camp battle number 2 is the cornerback spot. Mike, as everyone's talking about it. Everyone's like, where's Kaiir Elam? Why isn't he entrenched Hall of Famer? What's going on there? They spoke today. Butler, his DB coach, spoke today saying there's going to be a rotation and potentially into the season like you saw with Levi Wallace and Kevin Johnson earlier underneath Sean McDermott here many years ago now. So that could be what the Bills get, bearing an injury or someone really running away with it. But how do you feel about the cornerback 2 battle? And then there's Christian Benford, who just seems somehow like he'll take the job come week 1 somehow. So, like, where do you stand? And he was obviously one of my surprise to not make the team, but to take playing time away from somebody. So where do you stand with this cornerback 2 battle? Do you want to just see it go to Elam? Do you want to think it should go to Benford? Or do you want to go, I know you like Dane Jackson more than like the average person, myself included. So I'll give you a chance to talk about it. Like, tell me what the Bills should do at corner 2 and what you want to see, at least for not in the preseason, but week 1.
Yeah. So right now, after just going to the practice, a few days that I went to, it seems like it's Dane Jackson's job to lose. That doesn't mean he's going to be cornerback number 2 opposite of Trey White once the regular season starts. There's still plenty of time for Christian Benford or Kaiir Elam to play their way into that role by the start of the regular season. But at least at the starting training camp, the Bills coaching staff is going with what they know they can rely on, who has been consistent and reliable in the past for them. Now, if I had it my way, I was hoping that Kaiir was going to come into camp and snatch the job, especially you put a first-round pick in him, top 25 overall. I want it to be Kaiir Elam just based on the skill level and the talent that he brings to the table, but he has to earn it. And I think that's the important thing. The Bills aren't just going to hand the job to Kaiir. Now, the crazy factor is what you said with Christian Benford. Here you have a guy that was picked near the end of that draft later on, and he seemingly is also ahead of Kaiir Elam at this point. Now, it is clear there is a rotation going on. So just because 2 of them aren't going to end up getting the starting corner role opposite of Trey White doesn't mean you're not going to see them playing in games and making an impact. But it is going to be interesting how this eventually will play out. The way Kaiir Elam played in college with the press and the man-to-man, it doesn't necessarily translate to what the Bills do defensively. So there is a little bit of a learning curve. And obviously, to this point in time, the Bills don't feel confident enough to just hand him that job, which is a little odd for a guy that was a high-round draft pick. But at the end of the day, the Bills need to have players that they can trust. And I feel like regardless of those 3 that you have out there opposite of Trey, that the Bills will be in good hands. I don't think Dane Jackson gives you the ceiling that Kaiir Elam can give you, but I do think it's the consistency. A lot of what we were talking last year with Dane Jackson wasn't that he was getting burnt consistently. It was more so he was in position, but couldn't make a play, couldn't get his hand on the ball, couldn't really make the big play at the big moment. So I am optimistic whoever steps up will be adequate, but I am hoping that maybe Benford or Elam can step up a little bit more.
Yeah, so I did want to say big play of the game, big play of the day by Damar Hamlin with the pick 6. It looks like he's hitting the ground running and being every much as the backup safety. Mike, I've heard you get kind of, I don't want to say into it, but like last year, you were kind of saying, well, it's more the team decision what's going to happen with Hamlin. I remember you making some pretty good points, and I was kind of with you. And other people were like, he's never going to get cleared. And I remember this fight sticks out vividly in my mind with certain Bills members. He's never going to get cleared. 50 doctors are not going to clear him. You might find one corrupt doctor. By all accounts, he's back. He's healthy. He's in football shape. He's looking like comeback player of the year early, and he is, I think, betting favorite for it at the moment. And maybe definitely a special teamer and maybe a key contributor with Taylor Rapp, who's been everywhere. He has been everywhere on the field. Taylor Rapp's going to be a nice addition to this defense. And you have Cam Lewis fighting for a special team spot. So that safety position looks fairly good right now, as had struggles last year at times. And then Marlowe, who's more than willing to come in and be on this roster. But Damar Hamlin back and healthy. He's making plays at camp. By all accounts, he's definitely a solid backup safety with special teams ability. How's your opinion? I know, you said it early on in this whole thing back in February, March. I don't remember the date, but you were like, if he's healthy, he will get cleared, thus play. And I remember a lot of that not necessarily being the most popular opinion in the late winter. So back it up now. Like, how are you feeling about what you saw from Hamlin, the plays he's making, the press conferences he's doing, and by all accounts, I just don't see a story where he doesn't make this roster.
Yeah, I agree with you, Kevin. And I feel great for Damar Hamlin because he's back. He seemingly feels good playing football. It doesn't look like there's an emotional burden that he's dealing with mentally. Maybe he is off the field, but he's definitely not showing it on the field. We'll see what happens when he takes the field for a game and there's more anxiety and more emotion involved in that first hit that he goes for in a preseason contest or regular season game. We'll see if anything changes there. But my view kind of the whole time was, and I think this is what a lot of us as human beings struggle. We struggle with the emotional side of things. We struggle to take away the emotional from the reality and the facts. The reality of the situation is what Damar Hamlin went through was truly traumatic and a horrific thing for all of us to see. A guy basically dying on the field and on national television. But the fact of the matter was the odds of that happening in the first place are extremely, extremely slim, and it's a very, very, very rare incident. So rare that something like that, you could go through the history of the NFL and how many times can you actually think of something like that happening? So what my thought process all along was with this is the doctors that I was listening to on television, those that are way more educated than me, they consistently kept saying the same thing. They said, if he makes a full recovery, and if was a big word in this, Kevin, if he makes a full recovery, he will be his normal self again. They kept reiterating that. As long as there wasn't oxygen gone enough where it impacted his brain or impacted his heart or his organs or other things like that, if he made a full recovery, he would just be his normal self. And they said at that point in time, the chances of something like that happening again would be the same chance of it happening to any football player at any given moment on a field. So I think that gave me comfort at that point, saying that I thought if he could mentally get past the burden of suiting up again, that he would be there. And I think early indications, even in the early spring, he was saying, I want to play. I want to be back there if I can. I want to be with my brothers. I want to be with my family. And once you saw him back at minicamp in OTAs, it was evident he's going to give this a shot. So, and now you're starting to see him play with the backups and make some plays. And obviously they're not rushing him in. And I think the last thing I'll say is people, obviously this was a heart-related incident, but it wasn't one of those where he was high risk, where like with a heart attack or a stroke, you have underlying health conditions. He doesn't have something that leads to that. So while not a health expert, I just felt confident. This is one of those unfortunate freak accidents. But as long as he could handle the emotional and mental burden of it, he would be back. And one other stupid point to be made, because obviously I've never dealt with something like this, is Damar has even admitted he doesn't have memory of what happened on the field of Monday Night Football. I don't know if he's watched the clip. I don't know if he's seen it. But when you don't have the memory of something traumatic happening. That does make it easier to come back from. Granted, like he remembers being on a hospital bed. He remembers the recovery and all that stuff. But there were outlying things that kind of made me think he probably has a better shot at playing football and sooner rather than later than what maybe the majority of fans and other people would have thought.
Mike, one quick question about this. I agree with everything you said. You were on it early, so I'll give you your flowers on that. I think you were saying these kind of takes back in March, and it was correct. But does he win comeback player of the year? Yes, just simple yes or no.
Yeah, easily. If he takes one snap, he wins it.
You think so? Okay. Makes a roster, takes one snap. Okay. I agree. If he makes, I agree with you. I think he needs to play special teams or at least be active. And be a backup on the team for the majority of the year. But I think that he is odds-on favorite for comeback player of the year when many people thought he would never take a snap again, maybe never be the same again. It is a wonderful and heart-inspiring story for how well he's rehabbed and what a great great individual. I mean, just
and
all
Kevin,
around.
last thing too. Sorry to cut you off.
No,
people are forgetting he's a good player too.
He started
and he filled in very well last year after Micah Hyde went down and was a contributor, had some flash moments, obviously some learning curves. He had some rough patches, but he's a guy that before the incident, I would have told you, I think he has a chance to take over for one of those safeties once they leave Buffalo. And who knows if they had known more about Damar Hamlin's health heading into the offseason, maybe there's a chance Poyer would have ended up going somewhere else. Maybe the Bills would have stuck with Damar Hamlin. We'll never really know the answer to that.
Yeah, Hamlin and Rapp, right? They would have probably handcuffed him with Rapp. Yeah. They were said based on what I've heard and inside the team, my sources, Rapp was on the target list anyways, and Poyer just happened to come back. To your point, had the Hamlin incident not happened and it was more clear in March, I do believe they may have rolled Rapp and Hamlin and obviously and Hyde as a trio. So you are correct. The Poyer on the Poyer was just a nice little cherry on top of getting back your entrenched starters. Getting them at a great Brandon Beane rate. Brandon Beane will take anybody at the Brandon Beane rate, and he got Poyer at it, he got Rapp at it, and he has gotten many specifically defenders at the Brandon Beane rate, the BBR. So there is no issues when you play his rate, he will stockpile at a position group, and you see it a little bit at safety. He has some solid depth at safety, and he likes and unfortunately they like what they see out of Cam Lewis. Cam Lewis is a torpedo. He made a play of a day on Latavius Murray, who had the entire defense yucking it up. So it was an amazing stick torpedo play by Cam Lewis. He's great on special teams. He can play multiple different positions. He just happens to have Justin Jefferson tomfoolery one-handed when all he has to do is knock it out of bounds. And it's easy for all of us to say because I think Cam Lewis thought he was going to seal the game with a nice interception. He just had the one, maybe two hands, maybe just one hand in the league who happened to go up and win the ball, which was an interception. It just happened to be by one. It probably will come down as one of the best receivers ever. And we'll see Justin Jefferson. But anyways, Mike, so that's a solid safety. But I wanted to talk about the defensive line, how good it's been. That is some things I've taken major notes on this season. And I have a quote that really sticks out to me by Eric Washington. Greg is faster, stronger, and more experienced. Defensive line has been excellent. His rush on the right defensive end against our left offensive tackle, I've seen to start to improve. His level of comfort and just his understanding of situations and knowing how to win one-on-one, how to use his exceptional length to his advantage to set up some of the great things he does to win. So incredible praise so far from Greg Rousseau, who has bounced inside in certain pass situations. Very fun to think about a pass situation with Ed Oliver, Greg Rousseau, Floyd, as well as Miller coming back too. So it's going to be a scary good. And then they really like what they see out of AJ Epinesa. So the counter punch, Mike, to the offensive line, where really I have tracked a lot of Spencer Brown. He has been good. He has won a lot in team. He has had his moments. He was really good in 2-on-2s. Just had a really bad team session today. But this defensive line added Leonard Floyd, another year of Greg Rousseau, AJ Epinesa finally playing where he needs to be, and Von Miller coming back. Mike, it's a real, and then Poona Ford, who has had his pick six as well. It has been a really good defensive line. Like Poona Ford, a healthy Von Miller, and a Leonard Floyd addition was the influx that the team needed to go from good to pretty good during Von Miller's healthy stretch to below average to now excellent. It's been a thing of camp, and it's a thing of beauty to see if this actually comes together like the Philadelphia Eagles. Are you confident what you've seen? I mean, it's been probably all, punch for punch, the best you've seen Kingsley Jonathan perform well. You've seen Shane Ray, some of the guys down the depth chart. I've seen a little bit from DJ Dale that'll probably go to the practice squad. So it's been solid. I don't know that all these guys are going to make through waivers. I really don't. If someone gets traded, it's going to be from this unit. If someone gets claimed, it's going to be from this unit. Give me your opinion on the D-line being absolutely all world so far as of August 1st.
Yeah, they've been dominant so far during camp. And I see Spin asking, is the D-line that good or is the O-line that bad? I think the D-line is that good. Now, I'm not going to tell you the O-line is great, but I think the O-line is at least average this year with most of the guys that they have. You look at this defensive line, they could be elite. I'm not ready to say that they're top 3, 4, 5 yet, but they have that type of potential with the guys that they have right now. And I think it's important to say that they really weren't bad the last few years either. We all dog them for the Cincinnati game, but there's factors involved there. You had no Von Miller, no Daquan Jones. You had Jordan Phillips with a torn labrum. You had guys out of spots, and you even had Rousseau that was kind of hampered with some injuries, a high ankle sprain a little bit earlier. So we saw at the beginning of last year what that defensive line could do when healthy, when everybody is able to go 100%. And before the season last year, we were asking ourselves, could the Bills have 50 sacks? Now, they ended up pretty well short of that. They've been around the low 40s the last couple years. But where they kind of were struggling in the past few years was the depth at defensive end behind Rousseau, behind Von Miller. You didn't really have that third, fourth defensive end. And then A.J. Epineza has stepped up a little bit. It really looks like we're going to see another step out of A.J. this year. In fact, it looks like he's going to be possibly the starter across from Rousseau until Von Miller gets back. A.J. has been getting a ton of reps with the first-team defense, and by all accounts has been pretty solid so far through a week of camp. Leonard Floyd is extra depth, and then when you consider you have guys like Shaq Lawson and Boogie Basham battling it out for what realistically will be the fifth defensive end once everybody is healthy, that's some solid defensive end play right there. And D tackle, the addition of Poona Ford kind of changes everything. No one's going to deny Tim Settle was a disappointment last year. That you got to say, like we spent all this time talking about how Ed Oliver hasn't developed the way we wanted, or that Boogie Basham is a disappointment. Tim Settle didn't live up to the preseason hype that he was expected to have on this team. And you add in the Jordan Phillips injury early on against Tennessee. This defensive line never really had a chance to materialize into what it could have been. Now, I'm asking for a lot to stay healthy. I know that, Kevin. But
he was out today, Mike. Tim Settle was out today.
We can just get Ed Oliver to make a little bit of a leap to be somewhat closer to the player we were hoping when he was drafted in the top 10. I'm not asking him to be Pro Bowl Ed. I'm just asking him to be top 15 defensive tackle Ed. And then have Poona Ford bring some consistency next to Daquan. I really do think the ceiling for this unit is top 3 or 4 in the NFL. The floor, I'm still hoping top 10 defensive line, even if they're not playing their best.
I couldn't agree more. I'm very excited about this D-line. Whether or not Tim Settle is or isn't on it, I do believe he will make the roster due to the contract structure. We've talked about it a few times. And to Roy Collins' question, when do you all do a 53-man roster projection? Going to do it on the 22nd. So 3 weeks from today, we're getting into the 53-man projection show where Mike and myself will tell you about who we think should make the roster. Who we may think to get traded come roster cut down day. And next week, we have it live on Cover One Podcast Network here on the Going Deep podcast. We're going to do a live cut down day special because that's when cuts are due, the 29th. So 4 weeks from today, Mike and myself will be doing the Cut Down Day show as Cut Down Day. So we'll talk about the roster. We'll break it down, any trades that happen, any waiver claims that we might be interested in from players getting cut around the league. We'll talk about that in 4 weeks from today. 3 weeks from today, though, Roy, we will be doing our 53-man roster projection. So stay tuned for that. As I just think it's strange I'm like mocks. I'll do them. I like doing them, but I really like to do one as close as I can do to it and really hone in on the players I like, why I think they're going to draft them. And same thing in this case. I need to see a little bit more before I make a blind roster projection, and I'm going to do that. So over the next 3 weeks, I use preseason maybe more than some people do, but I do appreciate everything I see from camp, everything I'm hearing from player sources, as well as from the coaching staff. And then we're going to put that all together with what we see that happens from the preseason. So that is a picture that I really like to use. And then that's where I come out with my projection. I usually do pretty well. I bat pretty well in my roster projection. So we'll see how I do this year, and we'll track it the following week on the 29th. So that's kind of what's on the full next 3 and 4 weeks. And then the next week or two, Mike, we're just going to keep breaking down preseason games. We're going to be breaking down what we want to see. Obviously, stay healthy. When will Josh Allen play? Those kind of questions. I want to ask you that before the preseason kicks off, though. I had that as a note. When do you think Josh Allen plays? Game 1, 2, or 3?
I'll say maybe just game 2. That's really the only game I think Josh Allen needs to play. The first preseason game, maybe he'll get a series the first one and play a couple series the second one, and then can rest the third one. I personally don't think playing in the first or third game is necessary. You know what you have with Josh Allen. The only thing that you're really trying to, I guess, build if you have Allen out there is the chemistry with Hardy, Sherfield, and then also get used to playing behind some of the new offensive linemen. But everything else, I think you pretty much know what to expect. And we're even hearing great reports right now about the chemistry between Gabe Davis and Allen early on in camp. So I don't think you really need to see too much, Josh, this preseason.
I think that he plays against the Steelers. I think that's when you get a hold of Josh Allen. He played game 2 last year. I think they're going to kind of follow suit with the series and how good Gabe Davis has been. So that has been a storyline. I do believe the Bills will do whatever they can to retain this player. I don't know if they can come to terms. I don't know if they'll agree to numbers. I'm not really sure how that's going to play out, but I do believe that it'd be nice to get something done. Gabe, by all accounts, has been playing really, really well. He's been, as I've been told, receiver 1 quality, which is what everybody – as much as the expectations were there last year, Mike, I didn't really hear that or see it personally. We just figured it from the Kansas City game. I have seen it, and I have heard it, and I have now been told it, that he is playing to the level receiver 1 style of play. Is it a year late? Maybe in some people's eyes. But how do you feel about that coming out from Gabe Davis?
So I'm going to use some numbers that I probably,
sure.
I don't know if I'm allowed to share or not, but I'm going to say on air just to kind of give some credit to Gabe Davis, because we're always talking about how we support him and how we think he is on the higher end of the wide receiver 2 discussion. But there's a lot of people that will just rebut that with talking about the drops or talking about the reception rate, which is a dumb stat to begin with because it doesn't take into context the type of routes he's running, the throws that he's receiving, and the coverage and everything like that. But here's some numbers for you. Among wide receivers with 250 total targets the last 3 years, there's 45 eligible players. So we're talking about guys that make an impact on their teams. Among those 45 players, Gabe Davis is first in the NFL among those guys in first down rate, touchdown rate, average depth of target, yards per reception, and explosive reception rate. He is, by all measures, if you go into some of these more advanced stats, a productive high-end player. And when he spoke to the media the other day, it was interesting because people were asking him about what he can do, what he likes to do. And he even kind of admitted, he's like, I can play and make plays in the short passing game. I just don't get opportunities to do that. I'm always asked to run deeper routes and the intermediate routes. A lot of that reception rate numbers that people talk about that's in the mid 50s, that would go over 60 if you threw some more wide receiver screens or some more slants to Gabe Davis. Just doesn't get a ton of those opportunities. A lot of those go to Stephon Diggs. And Diggs actually capitalizes off of a lot of things that help Diggs out from a statistical standpoint. Not saying that Diggs isn't amazing. He's world class. But when you look at that first down rate at 75.5%, the touchdown rate at 17.7%, average depth of target for Gabe Davis the last 3 years, 16.4 yards down the field. Those aren't gimmies. Like, those are not gimmies. Yards per reception, 17.2, and then explosive reception rate of 51%. When they're throwing it to Gabe, they're making plays. So I think fans need to realize, like, part of the reason some of his numbers suffer is not because of him, but because of how the offense is designed and what role they have for him in this offense. I think now that you added Dalton Kincaid, who is going to take over the slot role, and you have some guys like Sherfield and Hardy that might be able to take care of some other things underneath, Davis should be able to thrive this year on this offense. Now, I don't know if he's going to have more receptions, more yards, because there are more people to feed on this offense this year, Kev, but all the numbers say a healthy Gabe Davis should produce like a high-end wide receiver 2 this year.
I agree with you. I have really high hopes. I think we kind of talked him up. He had that injury last year. I thought he had some unfair expectations. The development of a receiver 2, I really think you're going to see this year. And at the very least, I do think you see Jalen Waddle's style production, maybe out of the receiver 2 position. I'm not saying he's as good as Waddle. I do believe that he will be a top receiver 2 in this league, and many consider him so. There's some numbers that put him in wide receiver 1 camp. That to me is amazing from Gabe Davis. He's been that good, and he's been receiver 1 level. And Diggs said it himself. Like, it could be just Diggs being Diggs, but Diggs keeps it real. That's the one thing he does do, is keep it real, and said that he is a receiver 1 in this league. No one said he's a top 20 receiver, but he is a receiver 1, and to have him behind Stephon Diggs is what you're looking for. So I'm pretty excited for it. Everyone's excited for it. Everyone kind of thought that it would be last year, Mike. So I think that those expectations were fairly unfair. If you think about, what that 4 touchdown game was looking like. But Mike, I'm excited for him. I'm excited for him to potentially stay on this team long term. There's a lot to look forward to from Gabe Davis if he is playing like he is said to play so far this offseason. So going to be interesting to watch him in preseason, but I don't know how much you're going to see from him, because I do think he's that entrenched in this. And even last year, he had some some preseason snaps. I don't think you're going to see that this year out of him. I think that he is by far going to get himself a good range of targets. And Mike, we went a whole show without talking about Dalton Kincaid. We don't have to belabor the point too much, but I want to ask you about how you feel so far about Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox, this 12 personnel. That's going to be nice. You're going to be able to bring in Sherfield and Hardy and others into this 12 personnel, and really just have no idea who's blocking and who's going to be going out for a catch. It is going to be a nice wrinkle that the team lacked immediately all last year.
So it's amazing that we didn't start with Dalton Kincaid, because he has been the story of training camp so far. And he's going to be incredible, Kevin. I know we all want to keep our expectations modest. We don't want to go crazy with it. Last week I said 50 catches, 550 yards, 5 touchdowns. He could do way better than that if they choose to utilize him the way they have been so far in camp. And I know you don't have a ton of time, but I wanted to say a few things about Dalton Kincaid and then talk a little bit about the wide receiver 3 battle. I'll let you give your thoughts on that first. But this is going to be true 12 personnel. They are going to at times have Dalton Kincaid on the line. It's not going to be often, but Bean has alluded to, like, they can't just ignore it. They have to at least train him a little bit on the line for that. But what Bean said earlier on the Pat McAfee show is you're going to see him a lot in the slot to begin with Knox on the line. And so far during camp, there is such a smoothness to watching Kincaid run routes. You can just see the difference between him and the other tight ends. Obviously, Dawson Knox is a good pass-catching tight end overall. Dalton Kincaid is already beyond that. He has the ability to shake guys. He can read the coverages. He's already had some huge plays early on during this training camp. He had a 50-plus yard reception when I was there early on in camp. So Dalton Kincaid is going to be an impact player. I'm just trying to figure out, do I have the will to say he's going to have 65 catches for over 700 yards? Because to say that for a rookie tight end seems crazy.
Doesn't happen.
If you go to camp, the Bills are showcasing him every day.
Yeah. It doesn't happen, Mike. It doesn't happen. Over 700 yards is very rare in this league since 19. Will he break it? But if he'll break it, it's because he's in a pass-happy offense playing the slot. But producer AJ time. We're going to bring up producer AJ. Now show host of AJ's Analysis on the Buffalo Rumblings Network, writing daily articles. He has been at camp the last 3 days. Mike and myself just recapped camp up until Sunday, but AJ was there Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. AJ, welcome to the show. Welcome back. Pleasure to have you for a few minutes. We popped on your show, I think, last week, so it's good to have you over here. But we got a lot of live listeners, very interested to know what you have going on. Tell us what you saw these last 3 days.
Yeah, it feels like, I'm home. I'm back at the back behind the scenes here. I was back behind the scenes here for a little bit before you brought me in. So Steve has a comment over here on the right side. I heard that Diggs has been lining up in the slot quite a bit at camp. Any truth to that? That just leads me to kind of like my biggest takeaway. And today was a struggle for the offense. Obviously, the offensive line, that's been the biggest talking point. And a lot of people are blaming Spencer Brown for that and stuff like that. But it's not just Spencer Brown. It was the whole offensive line today. It was multiple guys getting beat. I thought Deion Dawkins was actually the worst looking offensive lineman out there today. He just looked slow. His get off, he was getting beat by, AJ Panessa. Leonard Floyd beat him. So just both tackle spots weren't the greatest in the interior. Ed Oliver was, the player on the defensive line the past 3 days for me. Just been very disruptive. But my biggest takeaway is the offensive playmakers, the ability for Trent Sherfield to line up anywhere on the boundary in the slot. You have Khalil Shakir, who's exclusively been working in the slot and with the first team. I think he has the edge in the wide receiver 3 battle, if you want to call it that, even though I know Mike was just talking about the expectations of Kincaid. I talked about on my show last night, I'm not going to sit here and say he's going to have 75 catches, 800 yards, and 10 touchdowns. But the dude, he just knows how to play the game of football. He has the game sense. He has the route running ability. He has the hands. He just looks the part. Matt Milano, he didn't do much today because Matt Milano made a great play. Because Kincaid's been getting the best of Milano actually the last couple of days, winning some routes, winning some battles against Milano, a very good coverage linebacker. Milano responded to that today. Allen tried to deliver a ball over the top. Kincaid kind of used Milano's body to try and reel it in, and Milano, didn't let that happen. Got all hyped up, and Kincaid let the ball fall to the turf. But overall, just the offensive weapons they have, like I said, Shakir, Hardy, they've used all over the field. Diggs has been in the slot a lot. He scored a touchdown in red zone portion yesterday in the slot on Teron Johnson. Beautiful route. So, and then last but not least, Gabe Davis. He has not altered his way of catching the ball, but he's caught every ball. He's looked really good. He was the player on the offensive side of the ball today. Just looks smoother, in and out of breaks. They lined him up in the slot yesterday. He did a nice quick out route on Teron Johnson, which was crazy to see Gabe Davis lined up in the slot. And then today used a nice shallow drag route. So, he's winning at all 3 levels, something he hasn't really done in the past. So, overall, just the offensive playmakers and the comfortability with Allen and those players is very apparent.
Yeah, so he has won everywhere. To wrap up Gabe Davis, as we talked right before AJ came on the show about how good he's been, maybe toward the top of the camp. Maybe the expectations this year are where they should be when people are down on him as compared to last year. So it's interesting. He's been good all over the field. He's been doing short, intermediate, and his usual 20 yards plus. He's been really good, always been really good intermediate. His numbers pop intermediate, 12 yards plus. He's excellent, actually. Really where he struggled and where you see some drops or you see some issues is under 12 yards, but that's not because he can't do it. It's because of his usage and the kind of opportunities that he's seen. But we're now seeing those opportunities in the 0 to 5 yard sector as well as the 5 to 12 yard sector. So I'm very excited to see that translate. AJ, who do you think wins the slot job? Like tell me about, I need your opinion on who I got to have somebody. Who's going to win the slot job? And I know Kincaid's going to be a part of this, but tell me Who else? What receiver is going to win this the majority of slot snaps?
Strictly the receiver, I like what I've seen from Deontay Hardy. I think they love the versatility of Trent Sherfield. So I struggle finding him just being a strictly slot guy because I think he offers so much in the boundary and in the run blocking game. So he can do other things that the other receivers can't. Maybe if Gabe Davis needs a blow or Stephon Diggs needs a blow, he can be that guy that can fill in. But like Roy Collins said here, I think it is Khalil Shakir right now. I think he's the leader in the clubhouse, although he has had some drop issues today. There was deferring reports today on a deep ball from Allen. It was a nice post. He, launched a laser in between the two safeties. Shakir has to catch the ball. In my opinion, from my vantage point, maybe Cam Lewis got his hand in there and made a nice play, but I think Shakir has to come down with that ball 10 out of 10 times. It was a perfectly placed ball. So he has had some drop issues. I know in individual drills at the beginning of practice, he's had some drops, but he's been a little inconsistent, but he has made some plays as well. So it's hard because I think Kincaid is so good over the middle and in that slot option. But if we're just talking strictly receiver, Deontay Hardy's been used all over the field. It hasn't just been in the slot. So I think if you're talking strictly slot, it's Khalil Shakir right now for me.
Yeah, it's kind of strange right now because we're so used to just one guy being the slot because we've had Cole Beasley for so many years. And then obviously last year, Isaiah McKenzie was the guy that when we look at these receivers, Hardy, Shakir, Sherfield, we're just looking for one of them to kind of take over that spot. When in the reality of the situation is when you refer to wide receiver 3, it might just be a combination of all three guys having different roles. Like maybe Shakir is the one that sticks only in the slot while a Hardy moves around the field. Sherfield might move around to different spots. But I think it's obvious from the early stretches of camp that they intend on using all of those guys this season. It's not going to be like last year where wide receiver 5, wide receiver 6 are basically just special teamers that don't really contribute much on the field. I've changed my opinion from going into camp. Before camp, I was of the view that Sherfield was really not going to be much of a part of this offense. Maybe he'll block a little bit, get a catch here or there. I think Sherfield will be a contributor. I don't think he's going to be a massive contributor, but I do think you could expect him to be around 25 catches, something like that. Hardy might be a little bit more, and then even Shakir. We'll see what happens. I will say this. I need Shakir to be more consistent. He's been very up and down so far in camp, and if it wasn't for him being a 5th-round pick that the Bills seemingly were high on last year and developing him, I'd be questioning a little bit about what's going on with him so far because I don't feel like we're seeing all the upside that Kevin and I and you to some extent have felt over the last year or so.
Great question. As we stay on the receiver topic, what has Mike, have you seen early on and AJ more recently? Tell me, guys, I've been asked this a lot around town. I don't know what it is about 5th-round receivers, but AJ, we'll start with you, then we'll go to Mike. What have you seen from Shorter in his 2nd and 3rd team battles?
Yeah, he had a nice reception today. I haven't really noticed him much. I've really been focusing on the first team offense and defense just to see like who's in there because they've been heavily rotating in the interior with the linebackers and with the cornerback room. So I'm just kind of paying attention to that. But he had a nice reception today with the second team from Kyle Allen. He hasn't really flashed to me, but I think he is a lock to make the roster just because of his special teams contributions. He's been getting a lot of work with the special teams unit. So I think that's where he finds his roster spot and he can develop his receiving game down the line here throughout the season. But he had a nice couple of receptions yesterday, and he's looking to continue to build on that, but not really much work with the first team at all.
Yeah, that's exactly what I feel, Kev. We just haven't seen much from Justin Shorter to this point in time. And when he was drafted in the 5th round, I didn't really think we would see much from him offensively this year. You look at the top 5, it's pretty defined with the guys that they currently have. And Shorter was kind of the opposite of Khalil Shakir. I know they were both 5th-round picks, and you are what you are and drafted where you're drafted, but Khalil Shakir was a guy that we thought was a day 2 pick that was a faller in the draft to the Bills in the 5th round. Justin Shorter was more of a guy that most people thought was a 6th or 7th round pick, maybe UDFA, that the Bills seemingly drafted higher than what many would have mocked him in the draft. So if Khalil Shakir was a developmental prospect on last year's team that had holes at wide receiver. I don't see a path to where Shorter on a team with a little bit more depth at receiver and more defined roles. I don't see how Shorter is really going to make much of an impact this year. Maybe he could get an occasional red zone rep here or there if you really trust his size and the ability to maybe make a jump ball or something special. But I think this year exclusively special teams for the most part, and you hope that you can find something to work with to develop him to where in the future, maybe next year or the year after that, you can start playing him more in the offense.
I will say this about Shorter. He was given a jersey on game day to be a gunner. I do believe that there is some hopes that he can take a gunner job, maybe with Saran Neal. We'll see how that plays itself out. He was said to get a jersey for special teams ability. That's why they drafted him. They were trying to draft players that could get a jersey on game day. To AJ's point, I do believe he's on the roster. Mike, you said it as well. I think you said he's going to develop as a special teamer with receiver ability. I think that you'll see that. And that's how you develop in this league, because you need to stay on an active game day roster to get those developmental reps. And that's how he's going to stay on this roster. And it's going to be very intriguing to have him over a Jake Kumaro. Maybe he'll surprise us. Maybe an in-game short-term injury happens. Maybe, Hardy's got to go out for, a quarter or some variation of Gabe and he gets dinged up or, whatever could happen. And you never know that he's the next boundary in, and he's just finding himself just because he had a jersey. He could find himself getting passes against a corner 2 or 3, maybe not the top corners in the league, from a Josh Allen who's able to get it done with him. So, guys, I'm intrigued by him. Have we seen anything to this date? No, I've seen some rough plays. I've seen some good moments, and I've seen some ability to play special teams, which is intriguing to me. But as of right now, he's going to be a special team standout, in my opinion. And he's going to be someone that is like a Marcus Easley. He's going to be someone that maybe earns the job in preseason to show that maybe he has some receiver chops. He's going to get a ton of time, guys, especially now releasing Wayne. I mean, you have Andy Isabella returning punts. So that's going to be an interesting battle as well. So I think that Shorter is going to get a ton of action. The Bills don't have a ton of those later guys. So he's going to see a ton of second half football here coming up shortly. So that's going to be an interesting player to follow who's going to get targeted. Probably a good deal from the Kyle Allens and the Matt Barkleys of the world. So it's something that I'm going to be focusing on to see what he looks like even against the 8th to 10th cornerback of the Indianapolis Colts. So it's going to be an interesting thing. He should be above that. So we'll see if he's able to win and thus get his jersey on game day. So he's going to be an intriguing player to follow as camp goes on. AJ, give me a player we should be watching for. I know, believe it or not, AJ and Mike and myself, we still talk fairly regularly, as many people know that were following our show this whole year. AJ was a producer here at our show before starting his own show. AJ's analysis over on the Buffalo Rumblings podcast network, as well as great content over there. AJ writes and puts up his notes and camp thoughts of the day. So check out his days that he was there, as well as other content. But AJ, give us some players, and we appreciate having you for 20 minutes here. But give us your player we should be watching for in training. Like, who intrigued you? Like, obviously there's Dalton Kincaids of the world, but give us someone that intrigued you. Like, I kind of want to see them in preseason. Who would it be?
It's going to be Balin Spector for me. And I didn't even see him get any first team reps today, but on the second team, he made 2 great plays. One breaking up a pass. I forgot who it was intended for, but he broke it up, made a great play on the ball. And then he stopped Mims in the backfield for a loss on the run game. So very aggressive, attacking. I know he had a really good day when he got his opportunity. Does he get another opportunity to be the first team, middle linebacker? I don't know. But that's one guy, and then I'll pick one more. I'm going to go with Dane Jackson. I know it's not the most intriguing selection, but I think I talked to you about it, Kevin, earlier. His floor right now is just higher than a Kaiir Elam. And I know Kaiir Elam's ceilings. Kaiir Elam at his ceiling is a better player than Dane Jackson. He has the athletic traits. He has the tools. He has the recovery speed. He's very handsy. And, today you saw him benefit from the aggressive Sean McDermott defense. They were rushing, 7-6 majority of the time. And that's another reason why I think the offensive line struggled. The communication across the board was tough. And the corners and the DBs were doing a really good job. I think Elam had his best day today. So Dane Jackson, though, for me, he's just been a consistent player throughout the last couple of days of camp. He's made a couple great pass breakups. He's been in the system for a while. He's played with, Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, Trey White for a long time now, if you actually think about it. So he's a guy for me that it's going to be, is it going to be a committee? Is it going to be an exclusive? Who wins the CB2 battle? I don't know. There's still, part of me that thinks Kaiir Elam does win it, but I would not be surprised at all if they roll out Dane Jackson there week 1 just because of the comfortability and what they know he can do. And once Elam can become that more consistent practice player and develop into a guy that can hit his ceiling more frequently and more often, that high ceiling that he has, I think could play into the cards as the season goes on.
Middle linebacker is an interesting position. I agree with you. I think Spector still has an outside chance to do something here. Will he be given the second half of these games? Will he be given a game 3 on August 26th to get it done against the Bears? Will he be given a chance to lead the defense? We'll see. I mean, things happen, and he is enough in the conversation to work himself in it, especially if someone's dinged up or something happens where they look awful in these preseason games. So I do like the Valen Spector pick. I still tend to think Terrell Bernard wins this job from everything I've heard inside the team and from team sources, but we'll see. I could easily go to Terrell Dodson, and that's that. But I do believe Bernard has this job at some point this season, earlier rather than later. So we'll see if that comes to fruition. But I want to ask you that this one was actually really intriguing. It was on my mind lately. Are the Bills okay at backup quarterback? I mean, Kyle Allen's losing some reps to Barkley, and Barkley is a practice squad QB3. So are we worried? Is this what it is? I don't know about going out and trading for Trey Lance, but I think there's something to this question of, are we okay there, or are we going to check this waiver wire out come August 26th?
Yeah, I haven't really liked what I've seen from Kyle Allen. He's just not. He's had trouble being accurate. He hasn't really done much, but at the end of the day, for me, it's like, is it a pointless conversation? Because don't you need your most important player available. And I know there might be moments where, hey, Allen gets hurt and goes down for a few games, and you're going to need that quarterback, that second quarterback, because of Allen's play style, to come in and get a couple of wins. Is Kyle Allen capable of that? I don't know. I think, like Kevin said earlier when I was talking with him, I think preseason will tell more of the story with Kyle Allen. He'll get the opportunities in preseason to showcase what he can do. But I haven't really liked what I've seen from him so far. But at the same time, it's a hard conversation because you can't do it without Josh, but you also know that if Josh goes down, you probably want a guy that is capable of maybe putting together a couple good games. I don't know if Kyle Allen's good enough for that, but he does have experience, and I think with preseason games you'll know more about it.
Mike, I'm going to go to you too on this question, but don't forget, 98 yards in the AFC divisional round. Mahomes is hurt. You think that it might be over. Like, Mahomes can barely walk. He could barely walk that game. He didn't play extraordinarily well in the AFC Championship game with his usual mobility against Cincinnati, but he's still so next level how good he is. But you saw Chad Henne go down the field for a touchdown drive for 98 yards in an AFC divisional. We're not talking about against the worst team in the league in week 12, no biggie, nothing really on the line. You're talking about in the biggest moment where Jacksonville could have gotten some momentum, and him doing everything he can to really salt the game away. And the Kansas City only won by a touchdown. So it was a big moment in the game. So, I don't think that in a long stretch, if Allen's out for the season, doesn't really matter, guys. It doesn't matter. But if he's out 2 quarters to 2 games, I do think that there is some interest level there. And I don't know how good Kyle Allen is. I think he's just a caddy. He is the guy I'd want as my QB3 to compete with Matt Barkley. That makes literal sense. But Mike, to you now, real quickly, are we okay there? It's an interesting note that these guys are going to play a lot in the preseason. Josh Allen's going to play 1 to 2 series max. So we're going to see 2 games plus 75% or more, or maybe 80 to 85% of the other third game. So 2.8 games. Mike, are you worried about this backup quarter? You only 2 guys there that are going to play a lot, or are you just like whatever?
I'm whatever, Kevin. Honestly, okay. Whatever happens. If Josh Allen is out for an extended period of time, like AJ said, they're screwed either way. So let's hope that the better Allen stays healthy and is able to play the majority of games this year. Kyle Allen, I'll say this. He's not at the bottom half of backup quarterbacks in the league. He might not be in the top 10 of backup quarterbacks, but he's decently average for a backup. He had a season with Carolina early on in his career where he went 5-7 in 12 games. So at that point in time, They even thought he could potentially be a starter early in his career. Threw for 17 touchdowns, 16 interceptions that season. So it's not like the guy is horrible. He hasn't splashed early on in practice, and you can obviously see a drop-off behind Josh, but that's going to be the case with the overwhelming majority of backup quarterbacks. When you have a guy like Josh Allen who can do things that almost no one else in the league can do, and then you put a middle-of-the-pack backup quarterback in, there's going to be a huge drop-off. We even saw that last year with Case Keenum at times. Now, we've kind of gotten used to having more experienced backups, having Case Keenum, having a Mitch Trubisky in recent years. But most of the time, you're going to end up having a guy closer to what Kyle Allen is than you are going to have a Trubisky or a Keenum, players that have started and expect to at least give competition to other quarterbacks when they go to new markets. So is it a worry? No. But do I think he can win a game or two if Josh Allen was out? That's going to be more dependent on the defense carrying the load and the Bills being able to just run the ball and keep the clock.
Depends on the stretch, Mike. It really does.
Like if you're playing Philadelphia, Dallas, like Kansas City, Cincy, that stretch, no, you're cooked. You're in trouble. But if you're asking, can Kyle Allen lead the Bills over Washington or the Raiders or the Giants? Yeah, absolutely he can. I don't know if I would pick the Bills as favorites in any of those games, but you still have Stephon Diggs, you still have Gabe Davis, Dalton Kincaid, and you have what should be a top 5 defense. That's where you go to McDermott and you tell him, hey, he tells himself this, I guess, we got to get it done with my specialty today. We can't rely on the quarterback to carry us. We got to have the defense win this. And I think if that was the case, you'd see a much drastically different Bills game plan to where a lot more running the ball, conservative play calling on offense, and let your defense kind of attack and dictate how the game is played.
Agreed. I think that there is something to be said for the stretch of football that a team could go through. He played 5-7 football. He played pretty well in Washington, to the fact where Houston was like, let's give him a shot. I don't know what we like from Davis Mills. Didn't play particularly well, but he's a 63 to 65% completion percentage guy. You can do that with a Dalton Kincaid, Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis. You can play a stretch of football that the Bills are looking for and maybe work yourself to a Trubisky contract. He's only 27, guys. He's not 38. He's got some mobility. He's a good completion percentage guy. So I'm interested to see him. I really am. There's not going to be a ton to watch for beside the middle linebacker. We talked about cornerback too a little bit. But the backup quarterback is something you can watch for in this, because you got to see, can he command a huddle? Can he get it done against the 2s and the 3s? If he can't, I do believe the Bills should be looking in the waiver wire in August, put Barkley on the practice squad and make a move there. So we'll see if any of that needs to come to fruition. AJ, thank you so much for coming on our show. Give us, what are you working on? What are you doing this week? Tell us what you're working on, what you're looking forward to, and tell us everything you got going on.
Yeah, I'm going to try and make it down. Well, first off, is there like some new graphics going on here? Like it's do you guys got some new graphics going on? The comments are different.
StreamYard decided to just not work today, so everything that's supposed to be behind here is not popping up. So just fun times, AJ,
Yeah, well, the comments, when you're pulling up the comment, it might be on my end, but they look different. They
are different, AJ. This is going back to like episode 1 or 2 of the Going Deep pod, before we had a backdrop and things that actually look nice on screen. So to any of our long time listeners, they might recall an episode or 2 like this.
All right. Yeah. Sure. But anyway, I'm going to try and get up to Friday to the Red and Blue scrimmage, check that out. And then, it's just going to be a lot of listening to press conferences again, because unfortunately I'm not able to. I don't have any more tickets. I might try and get a couple more and go to a couple more days and bring the live updates and coverage that the people have enjoyed. So I want to continue to try and do that. But if I can, it'll just be a lot of press conference stuff, a lot of press conference takeaway articles. I'm going to do my show every Monday night. I'm going to try and get some guests on for the next couple of weeks. So look forward to that. And you guys do a great job over at Cover One. And you guys, keep on keeping on and keep, it's almost here. So I'm very excited to get some football back in my life.
We've reached the top of the hour. We've had a special guest, AJ, pop in for 20-25 minutes. It was great to get his insight. He spent a great 3 days. Follow his Twitter feed, too, not just Buffalo Rumbling. Gives you live updates of pressers, what he thinks, what he sees on the field. A great Twitter follow. Gives you those daily, those live updates as well as his AJ Analysis podcast Mondays at 7. So we are excited to have him throughout this season. I'm sure he'll pop in every couple weeks or a month or so. We'll have him pop in. So that's going to be fun. Mike, it's going to be a great August, one of my favorite months. The weather's great. Some preseason football is something I enjoy more than the average person because I really do take some stuff away from this stuff. The ones, you can take a little bit from the twos, a little bit more, but really the back end of the twos, the threes, you can take some stuff from this. Jobs are won in the preseasons from roster position 46 to 52, and that can move up if your team's bad. But at least in the Bills' case, you could have 3 to 4 roster players made. So we're pretty excited. People are very excited to have you, AJ. So thank you for popping in. And from the Going Deep podcast, Mike Bunt, AJ Sobalski from AJ's Analysis. We're looking forward to a great offseason. Tuesdays at 7, we're going to be breaking down our roster prediction show in a couple of weeks, as well as the live cut down day show as cuts are on a Tuesday. So lucky us. So we're going to be here and be ready for it. It is one of my favorite days to talk about waiver claims potentially, as well as if there is a UDFA that makes the team. And I'll have to shout out to my guy, Richard Garage. He's been good. So we'll see if he's able to make that push and we're talking about how bad the O-line's been. We'll see if he's able to make the push for the roster. It is going to be something I'm tracking. But AJ, Mike, appreciate you both. And from everyone at the Cover One Network, we'll catch you next week.